So this is Aaron, he's 16 and he's our apprentice. He started with us in September, but he's been coming into the office even whilst he was still at school. So he's done his GCSEs and now he's on an apprenticeship with us. And today he's going to talk through the tenant journey and how we find properties and landlords, and then the process that we have for that. So before we can move any tenants in, what's the first thing that we need to do?
Well, have the property. So how we go about managing a property is pretty simple. We first have to find a landlord, and how we do that is through networking, social media, boards, and word of mouth. So say we have a landlord that is very, very happy with our services, they may recommend it to their friend who may also be a landlord. And Facebook posts, other social media outlets as well, like Instagram and TikTok, if they see content that they find interesting or presents our services very nicely, they may choose to contact us. So after they contact us, we go out for an appraisal, which is the first sticky note on my many sticky notes. And at the appraisals, we walk around the house with the landlord and just gauge the situation. So take a look at the house. If it's, say the rooms are like underachieving, we could recommend things that the landlord could do or implement that help them increase the value of the rooms. So say a room's lacking colour, or it has the potential for an ensuite which could raise the rents exponentially, we would recommend that to the landlord. But that also raises a question: to renovate or not to renovate? Well, that question is simply answered. Is there tenants in situ or not? If there are, you would try to avoid any major works because it will cause disruptions to the tenants already there. But if the house is vacant, well, it's kind of like free for all. Just go for it, whatever works for you. But yeah, if there is tenants in, there's other options as well. A light redecoration is one of the most simple but easy ways to raise the value of the rooms. So a room could be very dull, but a simple feature wall could add colour to the room, or simply changing the shade of white the room's in could make the room feel a lot more homelier, and therefore you could increase the rents for the room.
So what's the next step after we've been out and appraised the property with the landlord? So they're happy with it, either they decided to renovate it, maybe add some en-suites in there, or do some big sort of renovation works if it's just a normal sort of residential property that they're looking to convert. And if it's already existing and it just needs a bit of a light refurb, new carpets, some feature walls and some artwork and some shelves going up, after that's been done, what's the next step?
The next step on my many sticky notes is dressing up the rooms. So when you dress out the rooms, you just put on a throw on the bed, add some plants on the side, and then you take pictures. And these pictures are used for marketing on Spare Room and Zoopla. And yeah, so how we do it is we stand at the edge of the corner of each room and use a fisheye lens to capture the whole room. And the fisheye lens is really important, especially if the room's very small. It makes it look a lot bigger. So kind of just like lures the tenants in. But yeah, and then after we finish taking the photos, we take it back to the office and edit the photos using Lightroom, yes, it was Lightroom. Using Lightroom. And after we finish editing the photos, we put them on Spare Room and Zoopla. And yeah, after they're on there, we receive tenant inquiries. So yeah.
And how do we handle the tenant inquiries then? So we've got it listed online, so on Spare Room or Zoopla or wherever it needs to be. And then obviously tenants are looking at the photos, they like the description, they like the look of the property, and then obviously they start sending us messages through saying, can we view? How do we handle those inquiries?
Well, it'll be really tough to answer each individual message and from the tenants. It'll be really time consuming, so we've got automated messages. And on those automated messages, there's a link to book a viewing. And once they do that, they book a viewing with our lettings agent, Mark, who shows them the property. And if they like it, they can follow the link that was also on that automated message, the application link. Yeah, that was yours, wasn't it? Yeah, it is. And they follow that link, put application through, and at the end of the application, they have the option to pick if they have a guarantor or not. And depending on their answer, it varies the deposit they pay. So without a guarantor, it's £450. With a guarantor, it's £250. And after they've done that, the next step, which is to stick in its way, referencing. So referencing is done to check the affordability and the right to rent of the tenant. So the main one being affordability. So we need to see if the tenant can afford the room, and depending on the length of tenancy, if they can afford to pay their rent for the whole of their tenancy. So that referencing also checks their landlord reference, so what they're like at the last property they stayed at, the employer referencing to prove that they actually have a job and can afford it, and etc., and what they're like, kind of. And yeah, after that, after they pass referencing, we issue a contract, which is done online via, is it EchoSign? Yeah, via EchoSign. And once they sign it, the deposit is submitted to the DPS, and it stays there for the duration of the tenancy.
How long do we have to submit a deposit?
30 days from the day they move in.
Yeah.
And so after the deposit is placed into the DPS, the check-in process begins. So we go to the room, take photos before the tenant moves in, just in case anything gets damaged and we need to claim against the deposit, which is in the DPS. So we take photos of every little thing, maybe marks on the wall. So for example, say someone else is doing a check-out, which is done later on, I'll touch on that later. They know the marks were there before the tenant was moved in, so it just kind of, it's for our protection and theirs at the same time. So yeah, we take photos and upload them to the software we use to keep the photos.
Do you know what it's called?
iAuditor. And yeah, after that, after the check-in's done, the tenant moves in, and that's when the real game begins, management. So we have to kind of, I'd say we have to look after the tenants and answer their problems. So for example, say a light goes out, they put a request in, we send someone out to fix the light, or say there's a dispute within the house. It's more managing people than anything. So you got to remember, it's a house with different people that live there that don't really know each other. So we kind of just have to make sure everything's still civil and no one's arguing, having fights in the house, etc. And also try to keep the house antisocial behaviour free, because that's very common in house shares. So you got to keep the peace at most. So once the tenant's been there through the duration of their contract, so the tenancy may be 6 months or 12, depending on how long it may be, might be even longer. But once they're finished, the next step, checkouts. We take photos of the room after they've moved out and take note of any damages. So for example, say they burned a hole in the carpet, we will charge that to their deposit. So as I mentioned before, it's protected by the DPS. So we have to show evidence of the damages or what we're trying to claim back, because it's protected and we have to have valid reasons for taking the money out. So how we go about doing that is we fill in a form, describe the damage and the amount the damages come to and what we'd like to claim out of the deposit, submit that to the DPS, and they usually get back to us within, 2 weeks? 2 to 3 weeks.
If that's only if the tenant doesn't agree.
If the tenant doesn't agree.
If the tenant agrees, then the money gets released back to the tenant, and then we will get the money for the damages or any cleaning that needs to be done. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the last check out.
So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, and the process repeats.